On today's podcast, we'll talk about the importance of Star Wars to a kid, the surreal moment when you win an Academy Award, All Quiet on the Western Front, Patrick Melrose, and of course, learning about cinematography in a closed bookstore. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to the Op Podcast, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I'm Dave Comides, your host, and coming to you from fabulous Providence, Rhode Island, where I am here shooting a movie with my guest today, who is a great cinematographer, James Friend, all the way from across the pond. Some of his accomplishments, but not all by any means: All Quiet on the Western Front, The Acolyte, Your Honor, Patrick Melrose, Ballad of a Small Player, Ghostwriter, which I'm here shooting the American part of the movie. Most of it was shot over in Great Britain. I'm going to list a couple of the awards that he has been nominated or received, which he'll probably be upset at me for because there are a lot. 2023 Academy Award for All Quiet on the Western Front, 2019 ASC Award for Patrick Melrose, BAFTA Awards 2023 All Quiet on the Western Front, 2022 nominated for Your Honor, 2017 won Rellington Place, BSC 2023 All Quiet on the Western Front, 2022 nominated for Your Honor, 2018 2 awards for Patrick Melrose, 2017 2 nominations for Rellington Place. He was nominee for All Quiet on the Western Front Golden Frog Award in 2022 for Camera Image, and 2018 won for Patrick Melrose for the First Look Prize. 18 nominations and 12 wins entirely, and in 2024 he received an honorary fellowship from the Royal Photographic Society, which just sounds very British and very cool. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
That's quite the list of accomplishments, and I didn't even say them all.
When you list them all out like that, it's strange to sort of
most people who I do are like, who's that? But that's probably one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because that's doesn't surprise me that you don't pay attention to that. So what's your story? How'd you get to win all these awards and get to this place in the business?
I think from the beginning, sort of growing up, I've always been a true cinephile. Like the passion of watching films very much came from my family, who were always into it. We would have a kind of Friday and Saturday night, family event of sitting down and watching movies.
Awesome.
And even going to the cinema was a bit of a event, for our family. I remember watching Jurassic Park for the first time, and I was in Florida on holiday with my parents, and we all went to see it again the following evening. So it was it was very much sort of ingrained in my DNA. But I used it as a bit of a sort of escapism as well. I was pretty middle of the road as far as being an academic. I wasn't. There was nothing special on that.
There's
front.
A lot of us in that club, I think.
And I was diagnosed with dyslexia very, very early on, which I kind of think I've kind of used to my advantage a little bit in this business. But people say that it makes you sort of think differently or see differently or whatever. Whatever way of thinking that is, it certainly didn't help me out at school. But
do you think that because of that you thought more visually than?
I to be honest, I don't know, because I can't really step inside anybody else's head. So
Yeah.
I've got no way of comparing it. But apparently that is one of the sort of the the qualities of being dyslexic. But when I was at school, I was bullied when I went to secondary school, and
Secondary is what we would call like middle school.
well, it's kind of like from 11 to 18 or whatever
Oh,
the
okay.
age
All
range.
right. So sort of high school.
High school, yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
Middle to high. Yeah.
And cinema and film was very much my kind of release, I suppose. I used to, I'll go home every night and watch a movie. It was my kind of way of stepping out of the real world. I mean, I had a very, very, very lovely and happy childhood, very close to my family and my parents. But I suppose at school, when you're kind of on your own, outside of that environment, it was it was enough for me to leave school at 16 years old. Put it
Oh,
that
wow.
way. Yeah.
Really?
So and I've got an older brother who is very academic. He became a doctor and, went on to become a sort of successful businessman. And I've got a twin sister who became a lawyer, and they both went to, top universities. And, so kind of me leaving school at 16 was, I think, a bit of a shock to my family. But
Did they support it or did they
oh
fight it?
yeah, they very much did support it. But
That's
I
great.
think at the time there was a lot of kind of, is James fulfilling his full potential because of these bastards in his
Yeah.
class that,
And there's also stigma associated with
of
that,
course,
right?
yeah,
Like there's
people,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
people think that,
Yeah. I didn't leave at 16. I dropped out of college, but it was so it was a little less, but it was still sort of you're doing what?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there is stigma to it, and people was sort of would say to me, "Oh, what university are you going to?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm currently not,
Yeah.
because in order to go to university, you needed to get A levels,
Uh-huh.
and we have GCSEs in the UK, which I did pretty well on, but
Those are like standardized tests, I'm
yeah,
assuming.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but and it was enough for me to have potential, but I suppose I didn't. But I wanted to be a filmmaker. That was it. And
How young were you when you said this is what I want to do? Like, I mean, was it always that way?
I couldn't really give like an absolute definitive age, but I can say that it's as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you know what I mean?
That's
Like,
kind of I'm
yeah,
sort of the same way.
yeah. I mean, it's got to be. There was one moment that I've spoken about in other interviews where I was actually off school ill one day.
Yeah.
And I was sort of plonked in front of the television, and whilst my parents were at work, and there was this making of documentary about Star Wars, and I was an absolute Star Wars like obsessed sort
And
of
we're talking
aficionado.
about the old school original Star Wars.
The original Star Wars,
Yeah.
and Star Wars was definitely one of those films that would constantly be on. I mean, I'll come home from school, put on A New Hope, and then the following night I'll come home and put on Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah.
and then put on Return of the Jedi until I was told to go to bed, kind of thing. And I had all the action figures and was very much a sort of avid collector of all that
Awesome.
kind of stuff. So I really did kind of live in this sort of fantasy world of wanting to be in a different sort of world, being a Jedi or whatever.
Yeah.
And these shots that I was so familiar with, sort of TIE fighters and X-wing flying down a trench in the Death Star, suddenly I saw from a very different perspective and kind of lens. There was a piece of the Death Star that was a model, and then there was a man stood there next to the Dice Reflex motion control camera,
Uh-huh.
and models blowing up and shooting at high speed. And I thought, wow, I'd never seen
How it was made.
how it was made.
Yeah.
I knew that it wasn't real, but I didn't. It was the first time I'd actually thought, wow,
People do this.
Yeah, people do this
Yeah,
for a
that's
living.
a job. That's a thing. Yeah.
And I remember from that moment always being sort of fascinated with the making ofs, films, and it was very rare to see behind the scenes. And I suppose when DVDs first started coming out, on the extra features would
Yeah.
always be the making of.
Mhm.
So I would basically buy, 10 DVDs every week, and I would enjoy the making ofs just as much as I would enjoy the actual motion pictures themselves. And I suppose early on, I kind of thought, I just want to be whatever it is, whatever discipline I do go into behind the scenes. I just want to be part of making a movie, and when it gave me a very different appreciation of, when we would go to the cinema, the end credits would roll and everyone would get up and walk out, and I was one of those people when I was a kid, but then um, when I started appreciating the art of making motion pictures, I would sit there and I would wait for the credits to roll. And even people in my family would be like, "Come on, let's go," and I'd be like, "No, I want to, want to see, I want to see sort of who's involved." And especially with some of these epics, you would see them going for up for like 10 minutes.
Sure.
And I just remember thinking to myself, all I want is to see my name up on that, in that sort of black roller,
You and I kind of have very similar beginnings. And I'll tell you that you'll probably appreciate this. Is one of the first thing I ever worked on was as a PA on miniature visual effects for the movie Tremors.
Oh wow.
And I did that, and then I went back to school for a year, and then I left, and I came back to California, and I worked with them on Terminator 2, and I worked with them on this movie Clifford that nobody saw. But Terminator 2, this guy came in one day, and they go, "You know who that is?" And I said, "I don't know." And that's Joe Viscoso. And I said, "Who's Joe Viscoso?" Because like I didn't know. They're like, "He's the guy who blew up the Death Star." And I remember it was the first time I was like, "Oh my God, I'm in the presence of greatness."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This guy, because that's such an iconic image, right?
Of course.
And stupidly, I didn't have the nerve to talk to him at all about it, but he was in that making of all over the place. I went back and looked at, I'm sure that same one, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I mean, meeting, well, I think visual effects was one of those things that actually originally caught me, like that fascinated me. And I think to this day, my ideal job would actually be a VFX cinematographer.
but like you mean like miniatures,
Miniatures, matte paintings.
back when they did it. Yeah.
Yeah. And and shooting sort of stop motion type things, and like the Ray Harryhausen
Yep.
films always used to fascinate me, and I think the idea of, because it actually suits my sensibilities a lot more, because I'm sure they still had schedules and time and things like that, but it was either right or it was wrong, and if it was wrong,
You did it again, right?
you did it again.
Yep.
And I find this business at the moment is just more about shooting a schedule than it is about shooting a film, and I find that a bit heartbreaking. But then I always have to have a quiet moment to myself and remember that it is a business. It's not just for us, it's a passion and an art form, but for the people that we're making a lot of these things for,
It's money.
it's also, I'm not saying they don't care, because they obviously do, but it is about the dollar signs as well.
But do you think that the whole we were gotten to where, well, I can fix that in post and this and that and the other, that detracts from it? I mean, there's a certain value to that, obviously. But
there is. I mean, it's about learning what hills to die on, I suppose. And there are some. I mean, you and I've experienced this over the last week, haven't we? It's
Yeah.
Do we take that large poster down, or do we or is it a paint out? Because it'll take 10 minutes for someone to bring a set of ladders in, and all this kind of stuff, and actually we've got to get out. We've got to get out of here, or and for all sorts of reasons. But so yeah, I think I wanted to be a cinematographer. I always knew.
That's what was my next question. So early on, you sort of zeroed in on that.
Yeah, very much so.
And did you know anybody in the film industry? Did you have any connection?
A single person. No. And I think I was. I'd watch films like The Godfather, and Star Wars, and I was obsessed with Bond as well, and and indie, like the and I would think to myself, what is this overall sensation that's making me kind of feel the way I feel, and it obviously is a huge marriage between incredible performances and direction, and also, you turn the sound off on indie, and it's a very different experience. So then I had this huge appreciation for sort of John Williams, and uh, Howard Shore, and the in fact, it was actually the other day I was watching a film called Red Dragon, which was lit by Dante Spinotti, and um, the 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 score suddenly sounded quite familiar, and I thought, this is fantastic. This sort of slightly disturbed, deranged kind of thing, and I realised it was Danny Elfman, and
Oh, wow.
and and you can really hear that signature in there,
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to be a cinematographer. Didn't know anyone. I I used to I used to read a lot of books on filmmaking, and there was one chap called Paul Wheeler who I'll come back to
Mhm.
a little bit later on. But he wrote a book called Practical Cinematography and High Definition Cinematography, and there's been a few different sort of editions. And yeah, he became pretty sort of uh, influential. But I remember reading these books, and because I didn't have any way to put anything into practice, they were talking about loading a mag, but I'd never seen a mag before, so it didn't make, the closest to a bit of film I'd seen was still true. I was going to say motion picture film, but it wasn't. But stills,
Yeah.
film,
SLR film.
yeah, SLR
Yeah.
film. So
Yeah.
so I'd seen sprocket holes, and I'd seen a 35 millimeter gauge, but the idea that actually that ran through a gate at 24 frames a second, it just didn't even sort of comprehend in my
Sure.
mind. So I kind of saw this tree diagram that said director of photography at the top, and then it had three branches. One said camera, which I naturally wanted to gravitate towards, but then the other one was lighting and electrical, and then the other one was grip. And I actually, I remember talking to my dad about it, and he said, "Well, write to the BBC." So I wrote to the BBC. So I wanted to join their camera department. I think I sent about 9 letters in total and didn't receive a single reply. So
How old are you at that point?
I must have been 16.
Okay.
And um, wrote how sort of passionate I was and all this kind of stuff. So I found that pretty disheartening. I don't even know if those letters even reached
Yeah,
anyone,
I
to
was
be
gonna
honest.
say.
Um, so my parents ran uh, an electrical sort of contracting firm, and my dad, I think, originally wanted me to take over the business. And he trained originally as an electrician, and so did his father.
Wow.
And he said, "Well, why don't you do an apprenticeship? Because you need to sort of do something. You need to do something." And I suppose for me, it was a kind of something that I was interested in doing, but for me, using it as I saw it as an opportunity to actually get a qualification to work on a film set.
Okay.
So I was an apprentice electrician for 3 years, to get my full sort of qualifications, and but that didn't involve anything to do with movie making. It involved rewiring a bookshop on the Charing Cross road called Foyles, and warehouses, and putting conduit in and trunking and running cables, and making tea and sweeping the floor, and all the things that actually you can draw a lot of parallels with the film business. And also starting at the very bottom, and someone saying, there's a truck over there, and go in the back of it and fetch my tools and get the cable and do this and do that, and then slowly learning the trade. And I suppose all the time I was doing that, even though I did thoroughly actually enjoy it, because I'm quite a practical person. I enjoy sort of working with my hands, and being in different places every day, and so there were lots of parallels. But every sort of light fitting I was wiring, I was thinking this is a step closer to actually being on set. So at the weekends, I actually did a bit of sort of work experience in the local theatre because I wanted to try and understand lighting.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't do it sort of extensively or anything like that. But then someone at my electrical college actually said there's a website called mandy.com, which is it was a sort of open source thing of people that are making real indie movies or short films or grad films or anything
Oh,
like that.
to find workers,
to find
crew.
crew. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And you wouldn't really get any sort of professionals on there as such, but it would be like, I'm doing a short film in London,
Yeah.
and I need a PA, or
And you're meeting people too, right?
exactly.
As you find out.
Well, that's 90% of it actually, isn't
Yeah.
it? Well, so yeah, I started working as an electrician, but then on these sort of short films, and even though I was actually most likely the only qualified electrician on set, but I'd never seen a redhead before, or an inky, or a blonde, or
Yeah.
so I didn't know what a C stand was, so I started to learn all that kind of stuff, and then I said, look, I need some sort of proper training. How do I do this? So I at 18 years old, I went to a place called the New York Film Academy, but it was in London.
I've heard of this. Okay.
And I did a 4-week filmmaking course, which was pretty much, I'd say, some of the funnest 4 weeks of my entire life.
Really?
Yeah, and we learned to expose film, shoot on Super 16, and at the end of it, we had to make a little 5-minute movie,
Oh, that's
shot
great.
on film.
Yeah.
And I did that course, and I had so much fun. I actually enrolled to do it again, because I met this small community of filmmakers in London, who we all wanted the same things, but most of them all wanted to be directors. And I just thought, well, that was the best 4 weeks. So why don't I just do it again? And it will be like another fresh load of people.
You're getting access to the equipment, which you don't have otherwise.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Totally get it.
but this time I actually did the 8-week course, and I knew very much that I wanted to be a cinematographer, and so instead of directing this short film that you had to do at the end, I basically said, look, how about we pool our resources, because you had a little budget for film stock and for various things, and I said, look, instead of me directing it, why don't I DP it, and we'll put both of our budgets together, and we can
do twice as much.
Yeah. And I sort of ended up DPing a few other grad films, because nobody on the course wanted to be a cinematographer. They all wanted to be a director. So I kind of walked away with what I perceived as a bit of a reel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
All on film, and slow every time you look through the viewfinder, you kind of learn something, even today, so I was kind of starting to have a bit more of an appreciation. And then I actually did they started doing a digital filmmaking course, and this is pre Red Camera and Alexa, and even pre.
So it's like Betacams or something like that.
It was Betacam.
Yeah.
So it was all tape.
Yeah.
And this, I think this was pre-Genesis, Panavision Genesis,
Yeah.
Things like that. So because obviously the overall outcome is the same, I suppose, but it's a different, if you've only ever shot film, then digital is is quite alien, but I had the luxury of, my parents did buy me a Sony sort of, essentially it's a kind of handy cam, but it was something that I suppose, running around and without even realizing, learning how to compose, how to frame, how to, when you do a static shot, essentially what does that mean in your head? You don't really know. So so I did that course exactly the same, DP'd everyone's basically grad film, and then started to work professionally after that as an electrician on movies. And
Mostly with people you met there, or like how'd you get?
yeah, well, actually, my first professional job was there was a guy who used to run the equipment store at the New York Film Academy,
Yeah.
and he was basically gaffing a music video that weekend, and he was looking for crew. And obviously, I got to know him, and he knew I was an electrician, and I think I don't even know if I got paid for it, to be honest. I don't think I did.
I remember those days
and-
well. And you didn't really care because you were like,
Yeah.
I'm meeting people and doing things, and
Yeah. So I remember turning up and moving lamps around, and it was the first time I'd ever really been on like a professional sort of film set, and um and I kind of got in with this group of people, and yeah, it just sort of, it's the snowball effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then he gaffed something, a month later, and he asked me, and then I became friends with the DP that was doing it, and
Yep.
and the AC, and yeah, it sort of, it just naturally percolates and
That's
sort of.
fantastic. So you were an electrician on all these things?
Yeah,
Usually?
but I was, and I did it for years, but at the weekends I was still shooting my own short
Mhm.
films, and working with a lot of the people from film school, that were going on to make another short and things
Yeah.
like that. And we kind of forged this little community of people that I'm still friends with today.
That's great.
And that's kind of how I started. And then I remember getting offered my first super low budget movie that had a budget of like £100,000. I mean, it's like today it's laughable. I mean, we can, our sort of lighting setup tonight in Providence most
It's
likely
gonna be
is that much. So
And so you got offered, you mean as a cinematographer to shoot something? Do you
Yeah.
remember? Do you remember what the name
I
of it
can't
was?
say what it is. I'm so ashamed of it. But also, like, I go through these waves of kind of being ashamed of. I mean, it's why I never look at IMDb, or because it's most of the time it's incorrect anyway. I
Well,
think.
that's
But,
true. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but the stuff that you start off on is
But you're learning, like
yeah, of course, yeah. I mean,
it's
yeah, it's like looking at the my sort of daughter's artwork. She loves drawing, but we've got like the first thing she ever sort of drew when she put a crayon to
Yeah.
a bit of paper, and and then you look at sort of what she draws now as a 6-year-old compared to a 6-month-year-old, and so naturally
Yeah.
you're gonna, and it's also quite fun, I suppose, to kind of go, geez, fucking, what was I thinking? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why would I have done that? But there was this, I suppose, the time that really pivoted my career was, I remember back in the day when I was rewiring Foyle's bookshop, working for my parents' company. I always used to, my job as the apprentice was to when we would pull up in the van, I would have to unlock the bookshop and go around, turn all the lights on I think it was about 5 or 6 floors, and everyone used to convene down in the sort of basement where we were all stationed, and have breakfast. And I used to take that time. The bookshop's completely empty, quite a sort of spooky environment, really. And I'd turn the lights on, and you'd see all this sort of like mice and like suddenly just kind of like scatter, you know what I mean? But we had like an hour before the people in the bookshop started to sort of check in for work, and I used to sit there in the filmmaking section and used to read these books, and then would go, right, I've got to go to work now, and I'll put them back on the shelf, and then
That's
I'll
awesome.
I'll come, I would I think I read like an entire book on cinematography, over the course of sort of months, just in the sort of hour, half an hour before, to start work.
Do you remember any particular one that like was?
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a book called Practical Cinematography written by Paul Wheeler,
Oh,
who was
okay.
a BSc cameraman, uh, who I used to sort of idolize. And I remember one day I went into the New York Film Academy to say hi, because it was right next to my flat in London. And I got to know the sort of teachers and students and things, and they used to have this big board on the wall directly opposite the entrance that would have the sort of weekly, calendar.
Okay.
And I saw this this class that said camera class, visiting lecturer Paul Wheeler. So I basically just walked into the class. I wasn't paying for the course. I
Sure.
wasn't doing it. But I walked in. He was there at the front, and sort of gave me this kind of stern look, like "you're late" kind of thing. Even though I was not late, I was actually gate crashing.
Yeah.
Completely illegally, I suppose. And I walked in and I took a chair, and he was giving this kind of masterclass on cinematography, and I could tell that some of the people just didn't care, because they weren't interested in
Like that was
certain
a requirement
a
they had to take
requirement.
or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So he was asking these questions, and I was putting my hand up and I was answering, and then I started asking him questions, at which became this sort of wonderful conversation. And then I remember they broke for lunch, uh, and everyone left the room, and he was sort of packing his desk up or his bag. I went up to him and started asking him questions, and he said, "Look, this is lunchtime. I'm more than happy to ask anything, but should we just do it in a
So get
pub
it.
down,
Yeah.
down the
Yeah.
road?"
Right.
So I was like, "Yeah, of
Oh,
course,
what a
yeah,
dream.
yeah."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually bought him lunch, confessed that I wasn't supposed to be in the class, which he found hilarious, and we became dear friends.
Oh, that's great.
Dear, dear, dear friends. And
I'm assuming he was a cinematographer.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
cinematographer. He
Yeah.
mainly did television drama.
Okay.
So but he used to do this series called like Inspector Morse. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
Um, and um, and a lot of sort of good BBC dramas,
Yeah.
kind of like solid sort of period dramas and things
That's
like that,
great.
which is fantastic. And we became very good friends. And um, I used to then start. I used to spark for him. So he would do a job, and he would ask if the gaffer, if I could join the crew, and I did. And then I was on these sort of much kind of bigger
Hmm.
productions, I suppose. That with actors that I would actually recognise.
Yeah.
And uh, then he did a few other sort of smaller projects, and then I started operating for him. So I was kind of getting the whole sort of gamut of cinematography under someone's guidance, because I
Yeah.
was I was operating on smaller things for him, and then I was sparking for him,
Sure.
and he used to do a few sort of short films, and then I used to gaff for him and things like that. And I
What a
remember,
dream. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
I mean, I learned so much from him, and he couldn't complete a project one time, and I actually stepped in to do the sort of pickups for him,
Uh-huh.
so which was a real sort of honour.
Yeah.
And yeah, I learned an enormous amount, and we used to go for lunch religiously once a month, and he knew that my taste was for sort of much bigger productions. I'd watch I'd watch Bond and say that is what I
That's
want
what
to
you want
do.
to do.
I'd
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
Star Wars, say that's what I want to do. And he was very much in the television sort of drama realm. And he actually said to me one day, he's like, I've kind of got to the point where I can't really teach you much more, or like,
Oh,
or
wow.
or, or give you too much more advice. And I always used to go to him with sort of political problems on set, like the producers sort of doing this, or the actors sort of doing, and he would give me these sort of gems of information that you could only uh, you, you either learn the hard way or
Yeah.
and he was a very good politician. So I think he taught me. He also, as well as my parents, he instilled in me the sort of work ethic. Because a lot of kids my age would just want to go out clubbing or
Yeah. Yeah.
or sort of partying or whatever. But I realised that when you go on set, there's if your phone goes off, it is like the absolute taboo. Like during a take, or we work until it's done. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so I kind of got this really sort of strong work ethic from him. And yeah, I owe a lot to him. But he said to me, I can't really sort of teach you much more, but there was someone that he hadn't spoken to in sort of decades, really, um, who was a chap called Phil Mayhew, who went to they trained together at the BBC camera department when they were both about sort of 16, 18, and whatever.
Mhm.
As like clapper boys and trainees, and then and the way the BBC camera department worked at that time, which doesn't exist anymore, is you would work your way up through the ranks, and you would do a documentary, or you would do a sort of film of the week for TV, or and you'd fly all over the world, but eventually you worked your way through the ranks to become a DP.
Sure. Yeah.
And Phil's trajectory took him off to Hollywood, and Paul very much decided to stay shooting television drama in the UK.
Yeah. So he was a little more in the realm of what you were trying to achieve, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with the British Society of Cinematographers. Anyone that knew me or sort of knows me from that sort of age, I was always like, I want to be a BSc cameraman, because it was this sort of seal of approval that kind of meant that anyone whose work I really admired and who I was absolutely in awe with,
Yeah.
either had BSc after their name or ASc after their name.
Yeah.
So I kind of, because I suppose I wanted to project myself onto these people. It was something that I really coveted. I suppose it was. I would have been happy if my gravestone just said James Friend ASC BSc, whatever, and just purely because I wanted to be in the presence of these people.
Did you think realistically that was something you could achieve someday? Like, or were you like?
I'm a bit of a sort of character, as you've kind of discovered over the last few weeks. I'm a bit of a sort of dog with a bone kind of thing. Like when I've got something in my head, I can't.
You're not going to let it go.
Yeah.
I got you. So
it is. I mean, it's like any ambition. You push towards it, and you just pray that it comes to fruition.
well, I think there's also that thing of, I mean, I'm sort of the same way. It's like you sort of put it out there, and you have no idea how it's going to happen. Like you don't maybe think it's realistic, but you're like, I don't care. That's what I'm going to do, and either you do it or you don't. But
Well,
yeah.
I ended up doing basically a degree in cinematography in the end,
Hmm.
and I ended up getting into the London Film School, and as a sort of special case, essentially, and because uh, be, I think to go to a university or to qualify, you needed to get, it's like a point system essentially,
Okay.
and but in order to get those points, you needed to have done A levels, but because I hadn't done A levels, I put this kind of case forward that actually I did an MVQ in electrical engineering, which enabled me to kind of get certain points. And then because I'd already been to film school at the NYFA, I
Hmm.
I, I put the case forward to the school, and eventually they caved and they let me in.
Is
And
this sort of like an AFI equivalent, what we would think AFI
yeah, I
is?
mean, I wish it was the AFI,
I mean,
but yes, essentially yes.
it's sort of like a master's program in filmmaking. And
But-
do you go into like a directing, cinematography, whatever track, or is it all?
No. This is what was great about this course, which was so expensive. They had to shut the course down. It only ran for 2 years.
Nobody could afford it.
No, I don't think the school
Oh,
could afford.
the school couldn't afford it.
Yeah, the
I see
school
what
can
you're
afford
saying,
it. So the London Film School was famous for doing a course on filmmaking as such. And I think they did writing, and then they did an
Mm.
MA in filmmaking, where you went in and you learned all the disciplines,
Yeah.
from editing to sound to camera and which is a fantastic way to have an appreciation of everyone's job,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I believe as a DP you need to know how to edit. So and as I say, I believe to be a good camera operator, you need to know how to edit.
Absolutely.
So it's and it's something that you're very you direct as well. So
You try.
It enables you to hone your discipline and your craft a lot more if you have an appreciation of
Yeah.
of your fellow collaborators. So I did this course, which they started to run, which just specialized in cinematography, and it really, really, really pissed off a lot of the other students that were doing the MA course that wanted to be cinematographers.
Oh, wow.
Because we would go in every day and we were solely focused on camera and lighting, and there were these DPs that were paying enormous amounts of money to go to this school, but they or eventually they wanted to be cinematographers, but they were doing sound courses, and
Everything, yeah.
and they were like, oh, we want
Wait,
to be
but I'm
in.
confused. So this was specific to you that they did this?
So there was a total of, I think there was 6 of us in the class, or
Okay.
5 of us in the class.
Yeah.
And where the other courses, the classes of the MA filmmaking broader stuff was like 35 people.
I gotcha.
So we were very, very, very we we were very focused.
Yeah. Okay.
And the sort of I suppose I was trying to get to a point that but I'm kind of waffling, and so you have to cut all this out. But
It's all good.
but
This is great.
But I remember someone said to me this really sobering statistic, which scared the crap out of me, to be honest. But they said that 5% of people that graduate from film school end up actually working in the film business.
You think that's right?
And I have no idea, but I remember hearing it.
Maybe end up doing what they want to do because they all want to be directors or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
That
Yeah,
might be. But,
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah.
But I thought, oh my God, does that mean that basically, like, I'm gonna leave this school, and I've only got a 5% chance of succeeding, But I persevered and persevered and persevered, and what was great is the people from that school as well. We developed a community, and yeah, it just
Well, and that's what most of this is about, is like you meet people and they like you, and then they take you onto their thing, and then you meet other people. I mean, that's what all of it is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that's actually why we're working together, is because I met Danny at
Exactly,
the
yeah.
SOC thing, and we've never worked together. We just know each other.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, and everybody shares people with everybody else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that these sort of networking events and things like that, even though I never really saw it like that, I just saw it as an opportunity to get together and with like-minded people and talk, but I suppose that's how that's how you grow in this business. But eventually, I remember being with Paul at one of these sort of lunches that we would have, and I said to him, I feel like it's about time that I kind of get an agent, and I was asking his advice.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I can call my agent and see if she's interested in taking you on. And I'm sure he sort of may have had to have sort of
Cajole them a
begged
little
her,
bit.
yeah. But she said come in for a meeting. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's encouraging, and I did. And I went over to Elstree Studios and I met them, and I ended up getting an agent, which then naturally, leads on to
Yeah.
other things. And she was putting me forward for for television dramas and things like that, and like small indie movies that were sort of landing on their desk. And to be honest, at that time, I would have shot like anything,
I
as
was
long
going to say, you're going to take anything that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And some of these films were absolutely
We all did.
diabolical.
But
I mean,
you're probably the same way I was, which is I would look at it and go, wait, someone's paying me to figure out how to do what I do
exactly.
better.
Yeah,
And I think, and my thing was always like, there's some, I don't know if this is right, but it's like 10% of the time I would go, okay, I'm learning how to do this better. And 90% of the time I would go, okay, I'm never going to do that again. Like
exactly. Yeah.
you learn more from screwing up, but
Yeah,
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 and but I remember getting my first movie, and I thought exactly the same thing. I mean, the script was terrible; it was absolutely terrible. But someone, exactly as you say, they paid for me to turn up to work and do
yeah,
what I love, what
yeah,
essentially I would have done for free. Do you know what I mean? But
exactly.
and I thought, well, they're hiring a lighting truck and they're hiring a camera truck and giving me a crew, and and also I was crewing up from my sort of pool of people that
Of course.
we had all our little sort of club, and it was great, it was. And then after that I got essentially a reel, what you could, and then it's a real, like an attrition sort of thing. It's like that, uh, you know learning to be a cinematographer is more akin to, um you know Andy Dufresne in the Shawshank Redemption, with a little tiny
Spoon or whatever, I don't remember what he
tool.
is. Yeah. Oh, the rock
Yeah,
hammer, the
the
rock hammer.
rock
Yeah,
hammer
yeah.
that, over years and years and years,
Just
you just carve away
yeah.
and carve away. And I remember going onto a job, and my I was talking to my camera trainee one day, and I said, "What was your first job?" And she said, "Oh, I was a trainee on the last 007 movie." And I was like, "That was your first job?" And I remember just being so jealous, like, "Oh my God,"
Fantastic.
and you occasionally sort of meet these people where they sort of catapulted
Yeah,
into, it's you got to really fuck up not to or really not care to not be able to get further. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Essentially, if you keep your head down and you do a good job, and
You're gonna move
you're
forward.
going to keep moving forward,
Yeah, yeah,
with a crew.
yeah. Um, so so at some point you what's the name of the director who did All Quiet?
Edward Berger.
Edward Berger?
Hmm.
So at some point you connected with Edward Berger. Is he part of that? Because you guys have done a lot of things together, right?
We have, yeah.
And was he part of that whole crew, like from film school or whatever? Or
No,
was
no,
that somebody
no.
else?
I was put forward to do a short film that was being produced by and starred in by Benedict Cumberbatch,
Oh,
and I was actually I they were interviewing DPs, and I had this phone call, and someone said, "Could you come to Elstree Studios and meet them now?" And I was actually in hospital at the time,
oh,
about to have minor surgery, but I was about to literally go. I mean, I was in. My phone rang, and I was in the hospital room, and I was wearing this sort of gown. I was in the bed,
like pre-op
yeah,
almost, or
pre-op,
what? Wow.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
ready to be taken down to theatre. So, and I said, I can't. I said, I can't
I'm
come
busy
right
right
now,
now.
but and they said, well, can you come tomorrow? And and they went, oh no, I think that the ship may have sort of sailed by then. So I remember someone saying, after a general anaesthetic, your memory's going to be fucking terrible. So
Oh
so
wow.
I remember there was a pad next to the bed, and I wrote down all the information on it, and I went under,
Oh, so you wouldn't forget it
Yeah, so I
after the
wouldn't
fact.
forget it. Yeah, and I went under. I woke up, and it was the first thing on my mind immediately.
Yeah.
And I was obviously going to spend the night in hospital,
Yeah.
possibly a couple of nights in hospital, and I put my clothes on and discharged myself, jumped on a train, and
This was great.
I went and I met the producers and the director, and they actually. I was trying to hide it, but I had like an
Like
IV
the
thing
IV
on my,
stuff. Yeah.
and I still had the hospital band thing on, and they kind of looked at me, and it became apparent at the end of the sort of meeting that they had clocked this, and I wanted to sort of, I didn't want them to think that I'd sort of just escaped from a sort of
Yeah.
loony bin,
Yeah.
like a psychotic ward or something, like, even though most likely should have been. But I said, look, to be honest, I've just undergone surgery, and
Like
they said,
12 hours
yeah,
ago.
well, less than that. It was like six,
Oh
like
my
5,
gosh.
and they laughed, and they kind of found it that I think they liked the fact that I was that dedicated,
Yeah, I mean, there's not much else that's going to show you dedication than that. That's fantastic.
So I got the job, and um, and then did it. Had a great time, and then they were um, developing. That production company was developing a, a TV series with Benedict, called Patrick Melrose, which is based on a series
Yeah.
of novels, and they naturally put me in the mix to be one of the DP
Yeah.
when the director was interviewing, and the director was a guy called Edward Berger, who and they there was a big list of people he was meeting, and he they put me in the room with him, and I just shot this thing called Rillington Place,
Uh-huh.
and which I was very fortunate to win a BAFTA for cinematography for it. And the guy that was on the judging panel was another cinematographer who I adore, and I adore his work. A guy called Florian Hofmeister, and he's a brilliant DP. But he had worked with Ed prior, but he was unavailable to work
To work on that.
on
Yeah.
Patrick Melrose. So he also said to Ed, "You should meet James," and he was sort of familiar with my work, and I'd never even met the guy, but because he was on the judging panel, and he obviously
He'd seen your work. He was impressed.
seen
Yeah.
my work, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So there was a kind of two-pronged attack, I suppose. And I met Ed. I was actually shooting a series called Victoria at the time, and we were filming up in Scotland. And Ed suddenly needed to meet me, So I managed to convince production to on a Friday night, even though we were supposed to be shooting like the following day or whatever. I think we were doing nights actually, but I jumped on a train, and it's a long train journey. Went all the way down to Scotland, from Scotland to London, met him, and then turned around, got on the train, went back, ready for a night shoot.
Yeah.
And I got the job, met Ed, and we hit it off, and we've worked together, ever since.
I love the fact that you got out of the hospital after surgery. Then the next thing is you go, and the little time you have to sleep. Really, you're giving up all of this stuff to get there, and it ends up actually turning into this
Yeah,
amazing part of your career.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Well, I mean, these crazy, like, you don't, you have to work for it. I suppose that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, it never just like, I know so many filmmakers that they'll sit at home, and they just want miraculously someone to turn around and go, direct this movie,
Yeah.
and I'm going to give you 50 million to make it, and and they sit there, and they wonder why
Why aren't I getting
why
that? You
is
gotta
that
earn it,
happening?
right?
You've got to go out and get it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's that, and then you've got to earn it, and I suppose, being, I think, a bit obsessive compulsive. Well, I'm very obsessive compulsive. That's kind of part of my nature, and so
It comes naturally.
I would always, I mean, I remember, to my parents' dismay, like absolute horror. We would always go on these family holidays every year, with all of us, because we don't get to spend a lot of time together because I'm always out the country and
doing
working
something.
and
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
sure.
But I'd be a week into a 2 or 3 week holiday, and my phone would ring and they'd say, "Oh, can you come and take over this movie?" And I would say to my parents, "Oh, I'm jumping on a flight tomorrow," and they'd go, "What?"
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
would fly back, and it's only now I've realised to actually say no and to kind of
Well, you got a
slow
wife and a
down.
kid. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
well,
different thing.
exactly. Yeah.
So actually, I should say the first time your name came across my was you were doing Your Honor
Mm.
in New Orleans,
Yeah.
right? And John Lindley said he was taking this show because did you do the pilot
I
or the
did.
first
I did.
episode
I
or
think I
two or
did the
something?
first three,
Something like
two.
that.
Yeah,
But
but
John,
John.
and the funny thing, I was like, great, I'm coming to New Orleans, and he said, no, they're leaving their operator here. This guy Danny Bishop, and he goes, he seems okay. And then he called me up and he said, these guys are so fantastic, and he could not say enough nice things about you. Um,
John is a sweetheart and a very talented
yeah, and the thing is, my
cinematographer.
thing is, like, if John Lindley is saying you're good, because that doesn't come around very much.
Well, that's very sweet.
But so do you remember the first like big movie that you did? What was the first big, like,
I don't.
where you sort of pinch yourself and go, am I actually I'm actually like doing a big movie?
I don't know how to quantify a big movie these days because like I did a lot of television drama,
Yeah.
and I suppose they kind of increased in scale. And I was doing TV drama when drama became an
Yeah.
event things. Like when the second I remember hearing of the fact that Martin Scorsese was going to direct something for television, and it was called Boardwalk Empire.
Uh-huh.
And you kind of go, wow, like you've
Things have
got,
changed.
yeah, things have
Yeah,
changed.
yeah, it's true.
And then there's the truth is the television drama that I shoot now, uh, the scale of it is much bigger than any of the independent movies I was
Okay, I
shooting.
got you. Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I think I've just had a series of pinch me moments, but I've been asked a few times, like, what was your sort of big break? And I don't think I've ever had a big
Well, but
break.
that's why I sort of asked it, because it seems like it's sort of like dripping along into
Mm.
like this and that and the other, and it just sort of happened almost.
Yeah, it is that sort of Andy Dufresne thing of
Yeah, yeah.
just, it's been small
I
little,
love that.
small little sort of erode
Yeah.
away, but big. I don't really know. I mean, being Star Wars obsessed.
Well, I was going to ask you about Star Wars.
It the s- I the second, that being being in a rarefied atmosphere of shooting a Star Wars movie
Yeah.
is that you've got more chance of being struck by lightning than being a cinematographer on one of those, because they're so few and far between. So the second Lucasfilm started uh, advertising or saying that they were going to do TV,
Yeah.
for streaming, that's when I phoned my agent and said, I aggressively want to chase this.
Uh-huh.
Like, I want them to hear my name every day, but from you guys, until they cave in and say yes. We were actually out in New Orleans shooting Your Honor. Danny and I were sharing a house.
Would you say we keep saying his name? This is Danny Bishop,
Danny
your
Bishop,
operator
yeah,
who you worked with quite a
exactly,
bit.
yeah, for like 20
Yeah.
years now.
He's fantastic.
He is brilliant. He really is fantastic. But we were sharing a house, and it's when Disney Plus launched and The Mandalorian came out,
Yeah.
and I remember watching that, and I was a huge fan of Greg Fraser. I think he's one of the most talented
Amazing.
cinematographers
Yeah.
on the planet at the moment. And I remember watching it and just loving it, just like absolutely loving it, the way it looked. And yeah, I sort of used to say to my agent, just get me a Lucasfilm gig, I'll do anything, and I'd actually did a Lucasfilm series called Willow, which was
Oh,
a spin-off of, or
yeah.
a sequel to the Ron Howard
Yeah.
picture. And I don't know how much of a sort of success it was, or but but working with people from Lucasfilm who very much, they had all worked on Star Wars, and this was their first sort of Lucasfilm non-Star Wars kind of thing. But I suppose they liked me enough to have me back on the Acolyte, and
But just because I'm a geek, like, what's it like to get off the phone when they offer you a Star Wars
I,
project? I
I
mean, is that just like blow your
it,
mind?
it, the entire gamut of emotions goes through your brain, and no, I mean, I remember. Well, I cried. I remember that much. I like sort of fell into my wife's arms and sort of said, they've just offered me a
What was, I
Star Wars.
mean, was there actually a moment where you're like, oh, I've actually made it? Like, this is like,
I
or is
don't.
there fear, or is it,
Well, that's what I mean as far as gamut of emotions, because
yeah,
then you kind of go, I it's all down to me to mess this up.
I'm screwed?
Yeah, so and that I'm an extremely sentimental person, like I'm like unbelievably so, and my my fear was that if I, touch wood, I hope
Yeah,
this is wood.
it is close enough. Yeah.
I've never been fired, never ever been fired, and I thought to myself, if I mess up Star Wars and they end up firing me, I'm gonna ruin my childhood memories, and because they, like I'll never be able to watch Return of the Jedi ever
Yeah,
again
yeah.
and feel, and and I was so happy when they said that's a wrap, and I walked out of there sort of unscathed.
I didn't
And
screw this up. That's amazing. Yeah.
so yeah, and 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 this whole thing of meeting your heroes. I've had a few instances where I haven't enjoyed a project for various reasons, and it's really affected the way I've perceived those people and their sort of previous work,
It
and
happens, right? Yeah.
but the truth is, I just need to grow up and kind of have a thicker skin for these things, and realize that actually it comes with the territory. It's like when you do what you love and what you're obsessed with, and um, you know when you meet your heroes, but then it's never going to be
Well, they're
plain
just people
sailing.
at the end of the day,
Well,
right?
exactly,
And they have flaws and everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
just like we do. But so tell me about All Quiet. I mean, it just seems like a massive, massive film. I mean,
It was really quite a low budget picture.
is it right?
Yeah, I think we had 20 million euros or something like
Doesn't
that.
feel like that. I mean, I don't know why.
I think it doesn't feel like that because we agonized over trying to make it feel as authentic and large as humanly possible.
Because I mean, well, and it's funny. Maybe the reason that I don't think it feels like that is because right from that opening sequence, it just feels like a massive film. I mean, that opening thing that comes down from the heavens and goes straight into the into the battle is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think you know I always give 200% to anything I do, because when we make a film, it takes over your life. So
Yeah.
there's no point in trying to kind of resist that. You actually have to kind of go with the flow. It's the easiest way to get through it. And now I feel like if I'm going to commit to something that's going to take over my life, then you have to fully commit. And um, my wife had just I say just given birth. We'd had a first child, my beautiful daughter, who I idolise more than anything, and and um, and the film came during COVID,
Yeah.
and we had a sort of special dispensation to shoot, and it was all shot in the Czech Republic. Every frame was shot in the Czech Republic, and so traveling backwards and forwards was completely forbidden. You couldn't. You it was all, we've all been through COVID and the horrors of that, but I think the one positive spin of all of that was because you couldn't go out, you couldn't socialize, you couldn't. There was nothing to do but just work, just turn up to work,
Oh,
go home, and I was away from my family, which was heartbreaking. But the only way to get back to them was to keep shooting, keep every day at a time, every day. And I actually missed my daughter. I'm ashamed to say, I feel sick to my stomach even thinking about it and talking about it. But I actually missed my daughter's first birthday because of
Yeah.
work.
So you think the fact that you were almost because of what you're giving up, it's almost like I'm gonna make this as so much better than what it would be otherwise. Because what's the point of it?
Well, I think there was a subconscious, well, possibly a conscious element to that, but I always give 200% to everything
Yeah.
anyway. But this kind of made it even more distilled and refined. Just this sort of laser focus.
There's nothing else distracting you. And
Yeah, there's
whatever.
no. Yeah, so
Well, how great to go through that and then have it pay off the way that it did, right?
yeah, I mean, we agonized over the story. I mean, it's such a, it's essentially because it's based on real events.
Yeah.
So, and we wanted to make it as authentic as humanly possible. And Ed and I, we worked like 16, 18-hour days in prep just
Wow.
to storyboard, shot list, do I mean, we actually say that you can literally look at the storyboards and the shot list next to the film, and it is there, and that was very hard to pre-visualize.
Yeah.
The way Ed works, I got this kind of methodology of working from him, which I'd never done before. Was sit down in prep, break the script down, even when you're still discovering locations, but shot list. Now I need to stand in the space in order to know what the shot is. So this exercise would be a thing where we would be selecting these locations, and as we're selecting these locations, we would then basically shot list and sort of storyboard each thing. But sometimes we would do it even without knowing what the location is, which I found very, very, very challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he was almost asking me to do something which I didn't know how to do, and I still to a degree don't know how to do it. But yeah, we would sit down and shot list, and if I know what the location is, then
it becomes
something that we could do.
That's amazing.
And now I've done that for every film, like absolutely every movie. But obviously every director works completely differently. Like working with JJ at the moment is an absolute dream come true.
JJ Abrams, yeah.
JJ Abrams. I mean, I hold him up in the sort of the Mount Olympus regards of filmmaking.
I will say he is one of those people who you sort of like, when I got the call for this, it's like, I didn't grow up watching his stuff, but it's sort of like I watched his career, right?
Yeah,
as you did.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching his movies.
Yeah, and you meet someone like him, and then you're like, oh, you're actually like you are talented, and you're cool, and you're open, and it's like kind of everything you wanted to be.
I've had such a blast working with him because he's a true collaborator. He's a
complete collaborator. He's also, the other thing that I really like about him is he's as much of a film geek as I had hoped he would be.
Totally. He is
in every sense of the word.
He's like he's got the energy of a teenager, and the passion of a teenager.
And I think very much like I get the same feel from you. There's sort of that thing of, I can't believe I get to do this. From him even.
Oh God, yeah. And you can see the true passion and enjoyment that he's having on set, and it's very infective. Or very contagious. You can't help but he definitely, like. There's a few people, Ed and JJ, but very much at the top of that as far as really being able to get the best out of people around.
Absolutely.
Them,
So this is kind of geeky, but I do have to ask you this. You're at the Academy Awards, and they're calling out those names, and your name comes up. Are you sitting there going, "Why am I here?"
I think I've never been so terrified in my entire life.
Is it totally surreal?
The truth is, I mean, I think I'd had one glass of champagne prior to going in there, and that was just an attempt to settle my nerves, because I wanted to be lucid and not make a fool out of myself. But the truth is, I have zero recollection
That was my next question.
of getting up on stage. I don't know. Somehow my mind has suppressed this, and I just remember being in a. The next thing I remember was actually being in a lift, and the door was opening, and um, the first person I saw was Claire, who's the publicist, lady for Netflix, who's absolutely, she's a genius. She's truly magnificent at what she does. But the doors open, and the first person I actually saw was a chap called Rob Bredo, who works for Lucasfilm,
Okay.
and he's the head of ILM.
Oh,
And he sort of ran up and gave me this hug, and I was and I always that's my first memory, and then I remember sort of looking down and having this thing in my hand, and I was like, what? um
that's
and
awesome.
yeah, it was. To be honest, I still don't kind of believe
Believe it.
It's only because I have religiously watched the Academy Awards, and it was always broadcast at sort of like, I think it used to start at something like 2 o'clock in the
Oh,
morning.
sure. Yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't matter if I was at school or if I was working or whatever, I would always watch them, and I used to love the sort of spectacle of it,
Yeah.
But something I'd never wanted an Academy Award, because I always just presumed it was something that would never.
That's for other people.
Yeah, it is for other. Yeah, so I can't really say. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's lovely to have an Oscar. It's brilliant, but it's not something that I can genuinely ever say that I ever even wanted, like even sort of secretly, because I genuinely thought that it is so far out of my reach that I always thought that I don't really know, and to the point where I actually gave it to my parents, because it's more of a reality for them than it is for me.
So does it totally change, like, now that you're an Academy Award and BSC and BAFTA and all that? I mean, does it change, like, do you get constant scripts and everybody, I mean, does the whole game change at that point?
Not really. Do you know what? Um, it's a good question, because the answer is no, and I think you have to ask yourself why, and it's because that I love shooting television drama. I still shoot television drama. I love it. But I don't know if it's a thing from my agent or whatever, but people suddenly stop calling you, because they presume that you're just going to be doing a big
it
movie.
works the other way.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
And the truth is, I'll shoot a short film if I think the story is brilliant.
Good,
And I'm more proud of it for my crew, because it should say the cinematography department. Do you know what I mean? It should, and I remember saying this to somebody before, and they said, "Yeah, but you are the cinematographer. It still stems from you." But then, yeah, it stems from me. But then it also then stems from the director, because because that's how it works. It stems from them through me, through then and I yeah. I mean, like, working with Danny, and my gaffer and my grip out there, and my focus puller and I mean, there's so many variables on a film set that can change the way,
But that's wonderful that you have that I would say recognition of that.
Well, I think if it's going to say the cinematographer's name, it should say their name, and then underneath it should say, or next to it, not underneath, next to it, it should say, and the cinematography departments.
Yeah.
That's what I think is.
I personally appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, for anybody listening to this, you should go back and listen to Danny Bishop's podcast because he's amazing. Danny and I don't know if I told you, but we didn't know each other. We met at the SOC Awards because we both won that year. And I think the reason that we connected, I think the reason that we connected was because both of us were like, "Why are we here?
Yeah.
Why am I being given this?" And he's an amazing operator, but he's also a wonderful person. And he was telling me that because the thing that amazed me, and you can go back and listen to this, anybody who's listening to now. I was talking to him about All Quiet on the Western Front, and all of a sudden I was like, "Wait, do you speak German?" And he said, "No." And I said, "So how do you do that?" And he said, "I just kind of watched." And I mean, he said that certain times he would find a word for a cue or whatever,
Yeah.
but he said you just watch the emotion, and I thought that's like that's true visual storytelling.
Yeah, I mean it's totally right.
incredible.
I mean Ed did say to me when he phoned me up about the film, and he did say to me, a lot of production have just presumed that the DP should be German, or should at least be speaking, be able to speak German.
Yeah.
And I can't speak German. I mean, like, I haven't a clue. And I managed to. It was something that I suppose I did have to kind of say to Ed, "This is not going to be a problem. Like, this categorically is not going to be a problem."
Yeah.
And the truth is, I didn't know if it was going to be a problem. I just wanted the job so badly because it was such an amazing script, and story, and the opportunity of working with him again in that capacity. So, to the point where I actually said to him, if this is a deal breaker, I'll fucking learn German. Like, honestly, I'll go out right now, get a Rosetta, get a Rosetta Stone, and I'll be studying this. And tomorrow I'll have a German teacher coming round to my house, and I will, if that is a requirement, I will do it.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, it was for anyone who is listening to this, who actually is ever worried about shooting a film in another language, I would just say don't, because or don't worry about it. Don't do it. Because the second the clapperboard went on and we got the first shot in the can, I just realised that it just wasn't going to be an issue. I mean, it's literally, it doesn't matter, what dialogue this way. The truth is, I had the script in English, so I knew what they were saying. Yeah. I knew exactly what they were saying. So it's not like you watch the film and you see the subtitles and you're like, oh, fucking hell, that's what they were talking about.
Well, but the weird thing that occurred to me when Danny was telling me that, which was really a revelation I just never thought of until I talked to him about it, was it almost makes you do your job better, because the thing is, you have to make sure that visually the story is being told, right? And that you're lighting it well and that you're framing it correctly and whatever. Because when I'm listening to when I'm shooting normally in English, it's like there's that added thing of the dialogue that's telling the story. But here, that wouldn't be the case with me. So I'd have to just, look at the visuals.
Well, I still definitely listened to what they were saying, because you can tell you can tell the emotion of what they're saying. I mean,
you know what the scene's about.
You know what the scene's about. You've got the script. I mean,
it's amazing.
If they suddenly started going, ad lib, then that's one thing. But you still, the fabric of the scene and the meaning of the scene would never change.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I mean,
so at this point, are you aggressively going after the James Bond film?
Oh God, I did. I don't think it's a secret anymore that Ed was in the running for it, and
I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
And I think it's the closest I've ever been to being involved. The truth is, I'll make tea on a James Bond movie. I'd sweep the floor
I think I told you that when I was in London and interviewing all these operators, it drove me nuts because they were like, "Yeah, I did this Star Wars movie and that James." Like, they've all worked on Star Wars and James Bond.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, Albert Hall, or Gray. Albert is his nickname because of the the Royal
The
Albert
Royal
Hall
Albert Hall.
in London, but his name is actually Graham
Yeah,
Hawkes.
he's actually. I've contacted him because Danny told me I had to talk to him because he's
Yeah.
got great stories.
Well, he's
Yeah,
fantastic. He was one of the operators
yeah,
on the film we're working on at the moment,
yeah.
but in the
London.
UK, and you know he's I think he's done like five.
Well,
And
but Tony Jackson was with you, and he's
yeah,
done
yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
but the first one.
Yeah. I mean, Tony's worked in
It's insane.
the capacity on Star Wars and
Yeah.
Bonds, but as a clapper loader, as a focus
Yep.
puller, as an operator,
It's incredible.
throughout and that is, I mean, yeah, the idea of being on location in like I don't know Jamaica with Roger
Yeah.
Moore,
Yeah.
like you just think these are sort of
That's what I grew up on. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
pinch me
absolutely.
moments, you know.
Absolutely.
So and it's what's so lovely about working with these guys is and girls is that you can sit down and you can sort of ask them tell me a story, you know,
Yeah.
like you sat down at lunch and you got, you know, nothing to do and you sort of go, well, just tell me a story, tell me anything, just, you know, what was it like, you know,
Yeah.
and it's I always find it completely
It's
captivating.
fantastic, and also those guys like they all go back to the old like I said, the movies we used to watch when we were kids and still watch. It's amazing. So I want to ask you specifically, operating wise, what do you look for in an operator? I mean, I know you work with Danny a lot, but you
Mhm.
also work with other people. Like, what do you look? What do you expect from a good operator?
Oh, I mean, I've got pretty bad OCD, so kind of framing. I mean, I'm not just saying this because you know we're working together and we're talking at the moment, but your sensibilities as an operator, I think, very much fit in with mine.
Oh,
You
thank you.
know,
Well, one of the things that I noticed well, not very early on, but the other day was you said specifically that you don't like cables that are curly in the
I
background of a shot. I mean,
I've
cables that should be there,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
And so I immediately went, okay, so
I've got I see things very kind of like I love linear
Mhm,
um shots. I'm quite obsessed with symmetry
mhm.
and balance of a frame. And you know, I truly believe, and I think I've become uh, to appreciate this more now that a shot and a lens and the perspective is so intrinsic to the art of cinematography. Like where you place the camera is where you're placing the audience, and that's the way you should look at it. You should never see it as just a capturing device. I remember working with a director on a BBC series that we did, and he just said to me, "Oh, let's always just keep the camera moving, keep the camera moving." And I said to him, "Why?" You know, and he said, "Oh, because it kind of, you know, it just it keeps it alive, you know." I remember he used to ask for the operators always to be on sliders, and it would
Well,
always be sliding left to right. And I used to look at it and say, I really don't like this. I really,
mhm.
really don't like. And they would say, but you know, it keeps it fun. It keeps the image fun. And I said to him, that that means that basically, you know, the what we're capturing isn't entertaining enough. So we need to try and imbue it with something which basically doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, in that case, if the dialogue's that bad and the acting and the performances are that bad and the you know
You're
yeah,
distracting from that.
you're distracting, you're
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
distracting from that, you know. So what's the point? And he couldn't give me an actual reason for, to keep on sliding up and down.
Yeah.
And it became to a point where I actually did say that I'm the wrong person for this job.
Oh, wow.
And I actually wanted to leave. I've never left a production before, but I wanted to leave. And I think it's because I was hired as the cinematographer on the entire series, and that so directors would come in and
Mhm.
guest on various episodes. But ultimately, they are the director, so you kind of have to do what they want. And you know, I think we found a kind of middle ground, but
Yeah.
it drove me absolutely mad. And it's this huge difference between having, you know, a lot of All Quiet was handheld, and that's very different to giving the frame energy, because the you know, this is the other reason why I really I see things very much in a single camera um, way, because you know, I like the idea of crafting each shot so specifically. You know, what's in the frame is just as important as what's not in the frame, you know. And when people just think, oh yeah, we're going to stick 4 cameras on this and we're going to be done by lunch, you know, that to me is that I would actually rather not shoot than do that, because I find it too upsetting, to be honest.
I think I've said it before, but John Lindley once at the end of a day told me an AD came up to him and said, "This was a great day. We got 27 setups or something like that." And he said, "Yeah, but were any of them any good?"
Well, exactly. Yeah, you're totally.
It's not math.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Yeah. Did you tell the story well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, I had a producer turn around to me recently, where we turned up on location and the camera truck wasn't there. Or actually, sorry, the camera truck was there, but they had bought the wrong truck. We had 2 camera trucks.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Oh, they brought the second unit truck or something.
Well, no,
whatever.
one was, it was just completely empty. Literally, I opened the back door.
Oh, I
and
got you.
it was completely
It's like a swing truck or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
we were all ready to shoot, and the producer turned around to me and said, there are multiple producers on this job, and they're all fantastic. So I'm not going to name anyone, but they said, we have to shoot, even if it's on an iPhone. And I thought to myself, we're in a very unfortunate position here, because we're delayed 2 hours for the truck to come onto location, but just shooting for the sake of shooting is not the right thing, you know. And yeah, I kind of I couldn't kind of believe my ears then.
Well, but that comes back to what you were saying earlier on, is there's a business side to this, unfortunately, and then there's an artistic side, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that notion of that, you know, it was more about the progress report and
the optics
and the
of
show,
everything.
and the optics than you know, and that to me was
well, it's funny that you say that, because, like, again, going back to John Lindley, he impressed on me a long time ago that placing the camera in the right place, if you put the camera in the right place, it works.
Yeah.
And and I think people don't take enough time to think about that. And often, a lot of the shots that I've done before, as you're setting them up and as you're refining them, the simpler they get, the better they get. You know?
Yeah.
And actually, we did that shot the other day of it was almost an insert. It really wasn't, but of the guy with the hot dogs, right?
Yeah.
Of making these hot dogs, and he was and originally, you were saying, let's put it on something you'll follow him. And I thought so too, because there was so much going on, because he was putting on all the different condiments and this and that and the other. And we ended up putting it there and just finding that frame that it all worked in the frame without moving it. And it was so much better.
100%.
It was so much better.
Yeah.
But it's like, the simpler they are, the better. So let me ask you the opposite of that. Are there things that a camera operator can do that they shouldn't do? That are problematic?
I don't really. That's a very good question, because I don't have an answer that can just spring into my mind. I think you know, they have to be a collaborator, obviously. You know, and they have to see that they have to be able to fold in with the director's vision, with the cinematographer's vision, and you know, I know there's slightly different disciplines to operating in the UK and in the US. I know sometimes the director only really just talks to the operator regarding the shot, and the DP lights. That I find bizarre, because that's not cinematography. I believe that there is a magic triangle there, and the three of you need to all be in discussion, and you know, it's yeah, that's the way I like to sort of work, and I suppose I have when the Arri Alexa LF came out, and with that size sensor, putting a 40mm lens on it, to me felt like if I could translate putting my brain into a real field of view of something that's the closest thing to reality, the sort of human nature field of view. And I have this thing about which I think is very lazy on some operators and some directors, mainly director driven, where you just put a super long lens on. I remember I did this series called Silent Witness years ago, and the director basically he had a Chewy finder, and he basically went, "Yeah, it's
had a
gonna
what?
Like
the little director finder,
the little director
the
finder.
mini. Oh, I didn't know there's a name for it. Yeah,
we called them Chewies in
the old
UK.
school one. Yeah.
And he would say, right, it's an 18 mil right here. And okay, all right. Well, that was a great chat, and you say, okay, all right, fair enough. And then he said, yeah, so we'll do that. We'll put a 50 on after that, and then we'll put 100 on after that, and we'll shoot wide, medium, close. And I said, what, you don't want to move the camera, like you don't
mean from the same place,
from the same place, literally
put it on
a set,
boom,
put it on a set of sticks, and that in his head that was the coverage, and I was like, I said, well, why don't we set does it have to be on an 18, because we've got some furniture quite heavily established in the foreground here, and it might look a bit crazy. I might be looking more at that than I am at what we're actually framing for. Why don't we just go up a lens a little bit further back? And he said, "Oh no, this is it." So and then I said to him, "Well, when we do the coverage or the sort of complementary shots to all of this, why don't we go in on this lens and find a nice over the shoulder moment?" And he goes, "Oh no," and for him it was, if it's in the shot, if it was in the shot as a close up on the actor, as long as he could have been on a 200 mil lens. And as long as he's framing for a close-up, he's got the shot. He didn't care about
the language of the lens,
the language of the lens, and the lens sort of psychology.
That's painful.
And once again, I think this is when it comes down to collaborating with people. When you kind of go in for an interview for a job, I always say to myself, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, because you have to decide if these people are talking the same language. And sometimes you can, I'm not saying it's my way or the highway, like far from it, far from. I love receiving direction, and I love receiving notes and guidance about how to tell a story. But there's a difference between an authored look, and then there's laziness. And laziness is the thing that I actually detest. So that's. Yeah,
it's funny because that's one of the things that I fight sometimes, because this is a tough business, in the sense that a lot of the things that we do are hard, and I often will feel badly when I go, you know what, I know it's the last shot, but I think we got to get 5 sticks of track out of the truck or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll look for ways around to do the same shot, but sometimes I have to fight myself and go, nope, that's the job. Tell them what you need.
100%. It's so it's very easy. As you say, you could be on a night shoot and after a long week, and
exactly,
and the things start getting wrapped away. Which is also, it's also good leadership. For heads of department, like and you and I are heads of the camera department. So and I've been in that position many times where you say, yeah, oh, sorry, we need to,
that's the business. At the end
we need to get the crane back off, or we need to, we need to get that big light off. And but unfortunately, what would go down well with people at that time, where they may want to hear, let's just stick a pair of sets
here,
exactly, and do this. They're never going to remember it when it's up on the big screen,
and you're gonna live with it.
You've got to live with
totally.
it, And
do you still get nervous when you start a job?
Do I still get nervous before I start a job? I get terrified. I'm absolutely
seriously.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm terrified I never sleep the night before the first day.
So imposter syndrome is real with you.
Oh my God! It could be a short film or a commercial or a music video or a movie or a
Doesn't
TV
make a
show.
difference.
Doesn't make any difference.
Did it become
I'm
worse after you started winning all these big awards? Like, you
oh
feel like
yeah.
people expect more?
So there's something which I don't know if I've actually spoken about this publicly, but I'm very willing to. I remember I taught a masterclass at the ASC, and I brought this up. We can make or break a production, and we can make or break a day. You know, if over time, if I take ages to light something, then it can affect so many things. So I make it in my nature to try and strive for perfection as much as possible, and go in so focused that you can achieve what you want to achieve and what the director needs and wants, but we do it quickly and efficiently, because you never want to be known as being slow.
So it's a constant battle.
It's a constant wait. I think it comes with experience to learn to manage these things. But really, what I was getting at was, after the Academy Award, I was diagnosed with something called post-achievement anxiety, and which I had no concept of
I've
whatsoever.
never heard of it.
And apparently it's quite a common thing, but when you it's very, very common in athletes, apparently. People that win Olympic medals. So I've had this goal my entire life of being the best cinematographer I could possibly be. And then what happens when you achieve that goal?
Or at least other people are saying you've achieved that goal, right?
Well, I think that's what it was. That's what it was. Is everyone saying, well, what next? I mean, I never wanted an Oscar, but they kind of go, well, what's next?
Oh, that's fascinating.
And for me, the what's next would be another great project, like and a happy career. Like and working with friends and with good collaborators. That's for me all I want in my life, in my professional life. But so after the Academy Award, I was actually on Star Wars at the time, and that was a sort of pinch me moment as well. But when I wrapped Star Wars, I got unbelievably depressed,
because of this. What do I do now? Like, how do I top
well,
this?
I didn't know, and I actually ended up going to see a doctor, and they said what you're suffering from is something called post-achievement anxiety, which is where, like, these Olympians that basically train for years and years and years and put their body under so much stress, and then they compete against the world's best, and then they win a gold medal, and then they become it's like a phenomenon, like you they kind of think, well, I've achieved that now, so
where do I go?
Where do I go? And I was kind of subconsciously going through this, and so weirdly, I'm so grateful for the Academy Award. Honestly, I can't stress that enough. It is the highest honor, to the point where I still feel like it's a mistake, because that there was I mean, some of the work that year. I mean, I personally think that that Claudio should have got it for Top Gun, because like that, what the work that he did on that, and well, I don't even know if he even received a nomination, but the work was stunning, I mean, and for obviously the film being like a sort of actiony flick, what he did with the camera in that is just like
but a lot of times those don't get. I mean, it's a lot of it's PR.
Well, exactly,
and all those other things, right?
and which is
not to belittle anything,
but that's the other thing to think about. It's like, did I win for political reasons? Did I win?
You're constantly second guessing.
So you're constantly second guessing, and yeah, it's something that.
So do you then redefine what success is at that point? Like, what?
I still am trying to define it.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a. I think success to one person is very different to. I think it's completely
That's amazing.
subjective. You know,
Yeah.
but I would say that the Academy Award has actually screwed me up more than I think I've got. I think I'm almost like worse off for it in a weird way.
Because of what you're talking about
Yeah,
here. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But
that's
when I see
wild.
it, I feel it fills me with pride and all that kind of stuff. And but more for my crew that because it's a statement for them. You know.
But that says a tremendous amount about you, obviously. I mean, who you are and what's
I don't
important to
know
you.
if it's a good thing or a bad
I think it's
thing
a
or
good
what.
thing.
You know.
Look, compared to saying I did this all by myself, I think it's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it may be tough, but you know what it makes me think of what you're talking about is, I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing of like the biggest curse is winning the in the Grammys, winning the Best New Artist award. That there are very few people who are groups that ever win Best New Artist that ever go on and do anything good after that. And it must have to do with this because it's sort of like suddenly there's all this emphasis on, well, you're a genius and what's the
Far from
next
it.
thing?
So I think we're people that just care and love what we do, and
Yeah.
that's what makes you good at something. You know, I mean, I so yeah. I don't know how we got onto that, but the
Well, no, I mean, I was specifically asking about getting nervous, and
oh
I
yeah,
think no,
getting
that
nervous. Yeah,
that
so
totally hits on all of it.
yeah,
But yeah, that's amazing.
the thing is, I care so much that I uh, I mean, I'm terrified every day, to be honest. I really am. You know, it can be a very easy scene to shoot. You know, the truth is, apart from my family and my loved ones and my friends being on my mind, the shoot is always the last thing I think about before I fall asleep at night. It's the first thing I think about in the morning, you know. And I mean, you and I are about to go on a night shoot and shoot on a bridge,
Hmm.
and I can't stop
Yeah.
thinking of it. Yeah.
And is it at this point in the game, because you've done as much as you have, is it less how am I going to do that and more am I missing something? Is there some way to do it better? Is there something that I haven't thought of?
There's always a way to do it
Do it better.
to do it better in
Yeah.
my head. You know.
It's funny because I was teach I don't know. I was teaching a Steadicam course, and there was a night where a bunch of us showed up for a question and answer period.
Hmm.
And one of the students said, "Do you ever remember like putting the rig down after a shot, and just going, I nailed that?" And I thought, that seems so wonderful. Like, I wonder what that must feel like. And I said, I looked over at my friend Buzz Moyer and I said, "Hey, Buzz, you ever do that?" And he goes, "God, that'd be great." Because you're always going through and going, "Oh, I could have done this a little better. Or I should have held that frame a little better." And I think that's I mean, it's the fun and it's the frustration of it at the same time,
It
right?
is, yeah.
It's never good enough.
It's never good enough, and it's the nature of caring.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
do you know, I love it when, you know, I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction when we finish a scene, not so much a movie, but a scene, and you go, that is going to be a great scene.
We did
Like
something good here.
we did something, and especially when the performances are brilliant, and you feel like that what we as a department have brought to or as craftsmen and women have brought to the table,
Yeah.
in able to go on a journey, and you kind of go, right, we've really done that well, you know.
Yeah.
And and I've had that a lot on this production that we're on at the moment, this JJ
On the
Abrams
little that I've
picture.
seen, I can
Yeah.
understand it because even the scene I was thinking of that. It's funny when we were going home the other night. The scene in the Target where he gets up and he's reading the book and he gets interrupted by the guy with the who's shopping, which is not. I mean, it's a minor little scene. It's
Well,
not, but
I
there's just something great about it.
yeah, I mean the do you know what I loved about that is I kind of I overexposed that scene a little bit, and I like dark imagery, I suppose, but actually I really loved the kind of white, flat, clinical nature
The big Target.
of that
Yeah.
environment, you know,
Yeah.
and and it feeling like a sort of hospital, and almost like just rows of fluorescent lights that sort of just go on and on and on. I you know, I love that. You know, one of the things that keeps me really engaged in this industry is the love of other people that 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 we share a job with, or not a job, a profession with, or a discipline with. Like I'm a huge lover of other cinematographers. I mean, and operators and gaffers, and and other filmmakers and such. But I love watching the imagery of Greg Fraser, and you and I were talking the other day about Harris Savides, about like how that this is a person that can create pure poetry with imagery,
Unbelievable.
and yeah, I look at like Adam Akapol and Autumn Gerald Akapol, and their work, and and Roger Deakins as well. Like I looking at their imagery and kind of just going, that is brilliant, and no, and also doing something. I would never want to replicate their work, because I get so much enjoyment out of thinking I can never do that. So I can never do it like that.
I
So
love that.
and they're so good at it. Like Mandy Walker can like sort of beauty light in a way that absolutely captivates me. I think that she is one of the finest cinematographers on the planet.
Amazing.
And when you sort of look at some of the things that she's worked on, and how she can make an actor look so good. I mean, she did a film called Australia, and the whole film is like it's like looking at a Chanel commercial.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's unbelievable.
I haven't seen this, so I'll have to look
Yeah,
for it.
yeah. It's she's very, very good.
She's extremely talented.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I suspect that you and I could talk for a couple more hours, but we got to be on set at 6 o'clock and
Yeah.
probably take a nap before that.
I've got a pack. We're about to jump on a. I'm about to jump on a plane.
And you're about to jump on a plane the second that we wrap. So, and I've got to wrap. But thank you so much. This was really fantastic. I'm going to leave you with the question that I leave everybody with. Your advice for people getting into this industry on how to succeed, and or maybe what you wish you knew back then that you could tell yourself now.
I would say really stick with it and persevere. I remember being, a, a, a real novice at this, and sort of lying in bed one morning and thinking, this is what I want more than anything in the world. And it would be very easy. The easiest thing to do is to give up, and kind of just say I'm going to go and do something else. But keep at it, keep pushing. As I've shot some things which I'm really not proud of, and which we touched on earlier on. And I think having the this is me. I should almost be taking my own advice, really, but embrace those things, because it is a process. No one's born a Roger Deakins or a Mandy Walker. They may have artistic sensibilities and talent, but they still have to hone their talent. Realizing making mistakes is the best way to learn, and keep on making those mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and I learn from them, and it makes me a better DP, a better filmmaker, a better human. So I would say, look, make mistakes, because that is actually how you get good at something. Keep shoot anything at the beginning. Shoot as much as you can. Short films, music videos, commercials. Indie films, anything. The more time you spend looking through a viewfinder and shooting is another step closer to becoming, a better filmmaker. And yeah, just keep the passion alive. I mean, one thing I've always thought is when I was looking through a camera, it's kind of ruined watching movies. And even though I think the other byproduct of being a filmmaker and wanting to make movies because you love them it the second you step behind the curtain, you can never look at a film in the same way again. And I feel like you must love being an audience member, because and never forget that, because you're ultimately doing it for the audience. The second you're doing something, or a really cool shot just to show off, is the time you need to kind of look back at yourself and go, why am I doing this? It should always be for the audience and for the story and moving it forward. And for other aspiring filmmakers, I would say study other filmmakers, because not one person always has a silver bullet or the right answer. As we know, we're working together. We'll block a scene, and I'll say to you, what do you think of this? And you'll say, what about the camera over here? And I'll say, well, I thought the camera over there, but actually your shot is much better than what I was thinking. And so you need to be able to collaborate and learn from other people, and go into things without an ego. If you go into things without an ego, you're showing all your cards, and that makes you the best collaborator.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening, and have a great day.